Welcome back, everybody, to the Bitcoin Business Bureau. I'm your host, as always, Litecoin Leader. Today, we're going to talk about the economy and economics and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's actually going to be the first of a series of videos I'm going to do on economics. Now, something I've learned, observed, heard all throughout this year is that whether you like it or not, if you are a long-term investor of cryptocurrency or you're involved in this in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get involved in economics, both in your own country and also the world. So like it or not, you probably want to get a somewhat of an understanding of basic economics. Now, fortunately for myself, through hours and hours of time and study, and even before I got into cryptocurrency, I've always been interested in business and economics. So it was a natural fit for me. But I've been in many conversations this year, hundreds and hundreds. And I will tell you that without a doubt, one of the topics that comes up over and over again is boils down to basic economics. And it's, do you know what's going on in the world? And do you have the perspective of it? And if you do, it really helps to put it all together and to have a fundamental understanding of the concepts. And if you hear something, you can piece it together and say, aha, I know what that means. So rather than try to explain that over and over again on individual conversations, I decided to make not just one video, but a series of videos to help to explain economics and how it fits into the world of cryptocurrency. And that's what the series is all about. So this is my opinion, nothing more, nothing less, and certainly not financial advice, but it is what I call the theory of economic relativity. Let's begin. Just a quick reminder that nothing in this video is considered financial advice. I am not your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Seek out your own advice and do your own diligence, do your own research. So welcome to this series on economics. And the reason that you need to know this is that everything is intertwined. Everything matters. You have to understand where we've come from, and you have to have a respect for economics and history, and they're all intertwined. So let's start with valuation. That's going to be our first topic. And that will boil down to basic pricing. But valuation is how do things get valued? How do we know what something is worth? And historically, over time, thousands and thousands of years ago, we didn't have money. Money didn't exist. They hadn't come up with a concept yet. So what they did was bartering. They just traded things. They had goats, they had cattle, they had food, they had things that they made, clothing, shelter, whatever, trade, hunting, skills. They had all these different things, and you would just barter with someone. And you say, hey, if you go get me a goat, I will give you a couple of shirts that I can make, or I will tan the leather for you. I'll make you a bed, pillows, a shelter, something. So there was bartering because there wasn't any money, and people figured out what things were worth based on what you could exchange them back and forth. And it was all done on the local level because that's where you lived. And hopefully you had enough people that you in your community or your group or your clan, whatever it was, that you had all the skills covered: hunting, gathering, shelter, making clothes, cooking, everything. So as you put that all together, you were able to exchange and say, hey, I will anything from I'll watch the kids while you go hunt and gather, or you can cook and clean and I'll take care of something else. So that was a bartering system. That still exists today, but certainly much less commonplace. You will find it like flea markets or again, local face-to-face transactions. Like, hey, how much do you want for this? I will give you this. Like and typically they'll be like, I want $10 for it. Well, I'll give you 8. Well, you settle at 9, call it a day. You're good. Now you know the value of it. And now you know the value of it between the two of you because you had a means of exchange. That is money. So money came about 5,000 years ago, roughly. That's what we know about. The Egyptians they used currency, and that it went even beyond that. I'm certain that there were like shells or coins, whatever they used. But there are certain properties of money, and I won't go into them here, but Mike Maloney does a great job of explaining it. But there are certain intrinsic value properties of money that have been used over time, and certain things like precious metals have been used to hold that value prior to the invention of paper currency. So money was used to say, okay, to denominate value independently. And that was because you didn't have to carry around goats or skills or food or clothing and try to barter with it. You were able to just say, oh, I've got 20 bucks, or I've got 10 gold pieces or 20 pieces of silver, and I could that, and then things were priced in what people in that area used for money and to denominate value. And that led to pricing of other things like goods, services, labor, everything, and then led to more and more trade as the world got a little bit bigger beyond your clan, and you started to trade beyond your immediate environment and started to deal with like a international trade eventually. You needed those those common means of exchange to say, okay, everybody agrees that gold is worth something, so we're going to use that as the form of money. Fast forward to today, right? Now we've gone over what money is, and it's used to denominate value, right? So, and money and currency are intertwined right now. They're not the same thing. Currency is what's used to represent something with intrinsic value. So when currency was representing gold instead of fiat currency, so if you had a precious metal directly backing the paper currency, then you had the paper, which was easier to move around than pieces of gold and silver because they got heavy. But those pieces of paper were basically said, this is good. This is the equivalent of a piece of silver or gold, and we can transact with that. And then you can always go and exchange it for that gold or silver if you want it. Then we got away from that, and then things all just went awry. But that's part of a different discussion on inflation, which I will eventually get to. But now, I'm going to link, as I said earlier, the Michael Maloney videos are really good for going over the history of money. I'll be sure to include that link in its description and also up here in the corner of the video, right up there. All right, I'm getting used to pointing this way when it's really on my left. So we've had exchanges, we've had bartering, now we have money. So where does this come back to crypto and pricing and valuation? Well, we currently have a system that most of us understand in the United States, and most of the globe understands, because it is still the world currency, that the US dollar is used as the most common means of valuing or giving a price of something. That's about to change, and that's going to be significant. So we've, as I said before, we have never been, no one alive has ever been in a world where the US dollar didn't exist. But now we're about to enter into the world where a country like El Salvador is about to adopt Bitcoin as a means of denominating value. So you're going to be able to walk into a store and see a price in US dollars, because that is the local currency, and you also see a price in Bitcoin. Now, that's going to change a lot of different things. It's going to be a paradigm shift. So you walk in there, you're going to be able to say, oh, look, like this is $5, or it's and $5 would be about a $50,000 Bitcoin. I think that's going to be about 10,000 sats roughly. So we'll get into that in a moment. So that's going to, so you're going to see two prices there. And that's sort of be like, if you've ever been to, say, Niagara Falls, which is right on the border between the US and Canada, you'll see prices in dollars, and you'll be like, is this Canadian dollars or is it US dollars? Because you start to understand that there's foreign currency. When you go to a foreign country, which, you know, people used to do, you would see things in different denominations. You'd see it in euro, you'd see it in lira, you'd see it in yen, won, pesos, whatever. And that was part of the experience of traveling. You knew that you were going to be using a different currency. That was the local means of exchange. Now we're going to see two local means of exchange in El Salvador, the US dollar with Bitcoin. And that's going to lead to a lot of dramatic events over time. First, culture shock. You're going to see things that like, oh, what is this sats, or what are they going to use? They may actually start to list things in what is, it's a term I've heard a little bit about. The sats is going to be difficult. 100 sats is roughly 5 cents right now, I believe, if you do the math. So 100 cents being 100 sats or satoshis. One satoshi is the smallest denomination of Bitcoin, which goes to, there's 100 million satoshis make up one Bitcoin. It's 8 decimal places. So That's going to be a little ugly if people go to go like all the way down to sats, but you might see things in like 100 sats. But there's also a denomination that people are starting to kick around. It's not that widely known yet, but it's called a micro Bitcoin, which is 100 sats. It's one millionth of a Bitcoin, whereas a sat is 100 millionth. It's just like 100 sats is one micro Bitcoin. Or you could say 100 sats equals one micro Bitcoin, which equals today 5 cents, because Bitcoin is $50,000. I really hope I got that math right, but I'm pretty sure I did. So you walk into the store and you'll say, like, this thing that costs $5 will be the price, but also on the price sticker would also say 100 micro Bitcoin or 10,000 sats. And people's like, that's interesting. That's a new one. But if you have Bitcoin, you're going to start to say, well, okay, now I understand what that costs. So that's going to be the culture shock. You're going to walk in there and you're going to see two prices on the sticker, much like if you're at Niagara Falls or at the border of two countries, where there's two different currencies. And you'll see it's $5 or 10,000 Satoshis or 100 micro Bitcoin. And that's going to be a new paradigm for people to understand, to contemplate and say, this is priced in two different things. And what's really going to be impactful is that as these two things start to diverge over time because of inflation, which we're printing more and more dollars, and there's more and more of them in the world right now. And no one quite knows exactly how many there are because no one's tracking it. They just introduce more and more into the supply. But as there's more dollars, prices will have to go up to absorb these dollars, because if there's only so many, if you're selling something, and I'm looking for something, let's see. All right, I got a stapler on my desk. So if you sell a stapler for $5, all right, there's your $5. It's either $5 or 10,000 Satoshis. 6 months later, when you walk into the store, this could be $10 or the same number of sats. And they'll be like, well, wait a minute. How did that happen? How did the price go up in dollars, but not in Satoshis? Then you're going to, or it could even go down in Satoshis or micro Bitcoin or whatever denomination. So the prices will change, but at different rates. And the reason that will happen is that one is inflationary, because, which we all know that the fiat US dollar system is inflationary because they're printing more and more. Prices will be going up as inflation starts to get introduced. No, there's no escaping it. But because Bitcoin is fixed and there's only so many of them, that's not going to change. It's actually a deflationary currency, and it's going to absorb that, because let's say El Salvador has $100 billion of US dollars floating around in it. I have no idea what the number is, but let's say that's what it has. And then tomorrow it's 200 billion. So now everything goes up twice as much because the number of goods in the country didn't change, but the number of dollars did. So now the prices must go up by a factor of 2 to make it balanced. But Bitcoin didn't change. So it's still going to be the same number of sats, but the price is going up in US dollars. So that's going to lead to a paradigm shift as people start to understand that this currency seems to be holding a lot more value. I'd rather hold my money in Bitcoin because it holds its value instead of holding it in US dollars, which I lost half my buying power. And that goes back to the classic example of things that hold the value over time. And one of the stories that I heard recently is that someone asked the question a couple of months ago, said, well, in an inflationary environment, things like bread and other things are just going to be like, it's going to be $1 million for a loaf of bread. And then in the same breath, he said, well, I've also heard that Bitcoin is eventually going to be worth $1 million per Bitcoin. So he drew the conclusion that, would that mean that a loaf of bread would eventually be equal to 1 Bitcoin because they'd both be $1 million? And the flaw in that logic there is that the element that's missing is time. Right now, if a loaf of bread is $5 and Bitcoin is $50,000, there's 10,000 loaves of bread per Bitcoin. It depends on the supply of bread and Bitcoin, which we know the supply is fixed, but bread may get more scarce, but dollars maybe get more plentiful. So that, yes, it's very possible that at some point in the future that a loaf of bread could be worth $20, $30, $50, $100, and eventually on a path to say $1 million if we got to a hyperinflation event. But at that point, Bitcoin would be going up at an even higher rate of increase, and it would be worth, like, say, $100 million. So you may still have the same equivalent of value of, like, that Bitcoin will still buy you 10,000 loaves of bread, may even buy you more, but the denomination of those two things independently will be different. So here's the example that's often given in economics to kind of bring this all home. It is the price of gold for 1 ounce of gold historically has always been the price of a men's suit. Now that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, back to the Middle Ages when it was a suit of armor. A suit of armor, you would go to a blacksmith and say, I want to buy a really nice suit of armor. I need it. It's the Crusades are going on. I got to go. I need a suit. Let's go. So you buy it, you have 1 ounce of gold and you agree to the blacksmith and you come back and you've got a suit of armor, and that's how it works. Fast forward to the modern day, now we're in US dollars, and now that suit is a tailored suit. That's a very nice, say it's an Italian suit or however you, Men's Warehouse, wherever you're shopping. I'm this not ad for anyone, but you're buying a men's suit, a very nice man's suit. Historically, over time, 1 man's suit has always been equivalent to 1 ounce of gold. 100 years ago, that suit might be 100. I think it was the example in the video I'm going to share. It was roughly $30 for the suit and the pair of shoes. Gold was $30 an ounce. So 1 ounce of gold equaled a nice suit and a pair of shoes. Fast forward today, gold is somewhere between $1,800 and $2,000 an ounce, which is a very nice suit and a pair of shoes. Gold held its value against a nice suit. What's changed over time for that suit of armor, back then it was $30. Same suit, that's the same purpose, same stylization, whatever. Well, it's probably a different style back then, but same purpose, a man's nice suit. Throughout time has been 1 ounce of gold, but denominating that in different currencies has changed because those currencies have been inflationary. So I'm going to save inflation for our next episode of the theory of economic relativity, or at least my theory of economic relativity. So for now, I'm just going to close the drawer on the bureau, and I'll see you next time.